All right, this is my Illinois 2020 public land buck. Just got the mount back from the taxidermist and it looks pretty awesome. I'm really stoked to hang this on the wall. We're gonna do a hunt breakdown here in just a second and tell you why we were successful, but I wanted to talk about a few of the things early on that led to this hunt. And first of all, summer scouting was a big part of this. KC actually found a scrape, a perennial year-round scrape in the woods, in the middle of the woods, that was being used, and we hung a camera on it and were able to pick up bucks immediately and all throughout the summer. And then it paid off in late October on a cold front. I had some friends and different people that I was bouncing ideas off of and was able to go, this is the cold front on the 23rd of October that is gonna make me kill a deer, right? So I show up in Illinois on the 23rd, hunting a cold front, and within 2 hours I kill this buck after sitting in the stand. So anyway, real quick before we get to the hunt breakdown, I wanna talk about the mount and why I got it done this way. Essentially, this deer is in like a semi-sneak position. His head's kind of up, which I thought with these beams, the way they're splayed out kind of and they lay over, like he looks really good from the front and kind of from underneath, which is not really a characteristic most deer have. I thought that was cool. And then he also looks like he's coming up and about to nose up to the scrape from the direction I saw him at and where I shot him at. So anyway, really cool mount. He's a little bit more gray than a lot of the deer I have, but I'm really impressed with what I got going on here and I'm really excited to hang him on the wall. So with that, let's get to the hunt breakdown. So on this particular hunt, this is basically based around a cold front in late October. That's the reason I traveled up there. Luckily I have a flexible enough schedule that I could see the weather coming from about a week ahead and planned to get there the night before the cold front hit, which was gonna hit in the afternoon. And then basically drive rows, scout ag, crops, all that in the morning, and also deer, and see where they're using it, where they're coming from, and just make a decision if something else was going to happen. But we, prior to that trip, even that last summer, we did some scouting. That's when you found the scrape. So we were able to hang cameras on this scrape all summer, and Anthony checked them for us, and we were able to see that there were some good bucks using it. The cameras actually helped me to figure out where to set up on this. So anyway, here we are. We're walking in right now.
You're rocking in.
This is the first afternoon of the hunt. So we got there the afternoon before, did a little bit of scouting right before dark, and then
old bush honeysuckle.
And then, then we scouted the morning, and now you can see that it's overcast, the cold front is coming in, and I'm trying to find a way. Access was kind of difficult. I felt like we had to access a particular direction here that we had never come in because we'd only scouted it, and so in summertime you're not worried about access really as you're stomping through the woods. So right here you see a trail camera in the background that we had hung, and I didn't want to go because it's pointed at the scrape. This kind of annual scrape or year-round scrape, and I didn't want to stomp in there on that scrape and create scent and stuff. I saw a giant there on the trail camera. I looked at a few pictures, and just the giant deer that we had seen that summer had definitely grown even bigger.
Above your head right there, is that the trail the deer comes in on?
I believe. No, that's the other direction.
That's the east. Okay,
yeah, that's where I came in from. Pretty much. Yep. So yeah, this is a hackberry. This is 13 yards from the scrape. I wanted to be able to shoot the scrape because as you can tell, everything's still leafed out, and there's not a whole lot of shots in here. I mean, I didn't even see deer until they were 25 yards or in on this hunt. So I got up in this hackberry. There wasn't very much cover. If you've thought about it, you can tell we do have a cameraman with us on this trip, and so two guys have to hang in this hackberry, and you can see there's just not a ton of cover, right? It's lost a few leaves, and it's a hackberry.
oh, what's that?
That's the giant that we had on, obviously 10-4 there. I don't remember what picture I was looking at.
That's shooting light too, huh?
Oh yeah, that's a.
He has a split brow and a kicker off of his tooth.
He does, doesn't he? Ooh, just ruling the woods. Like that G2 is a giant. You see him reaching up to that little oak tree scrape licking branch right there. He's a toad. Just so you know, I had this deer at 8 yards on this hunt.
Scary
You don't
buck.
get to see him.
He's got a little hole in the horn thing going on at the end of that maybe right there. I wonder if that was an infection that made that side smaller.
That might have been. Really pretty that time of year, though, man.
Yeah.
Colors are awesome in the woods.
All those invasive species down there on the ground. We went up there scouting not long ago and figured out what bush honeysuckle is. We didn't know that that's what all this is on the ground down here.
Yeah.
But that's what it is.
Yep. I didn't feel that great about this, actually. Because up until this point there was a lot of nocturnal movement and not just a ton of bucks coming in, but it's crazy what I'm realizing now, it's crazy what a cold front in late October can do to the woods, especially in the Midwest where things are kind of consistent like that.
We were communicating. I was at Brookshire's here in East Texas.
I'm like, oh, it's better than I thought.
And the cold front hit here before it hit y'all in Illinois. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But like it was like a 30-degree drop. It was nuts.
It was a good cold front for sure, man. We actually are sitting here and it's just dropping, even though it's kind of middle of the day. We got in there early, Kind of felt good. Like I didn't have to rush into this thing. I got to get out early and get set up, pick the right tree and everything. I'm telling our cameraman here that I feel like I may have a chance at the biggest buck of my life, on this trip, because we had seen that buck on camera a few times.
I remember you texting me during this time. I don't know who you're texting here. You're looking at a map there, but like you were like a 4 out of 10, and then like the I guess anticipating the kill or whatever. Like you just weren't super amped.
Yep.
And then. It gets more ampy.
It's just weird, like you hunt, I think this is October 23rd, you hunt October 23rd in Texas, it's 95, and even if there is a cold front, like, you still just don't feel good about it, really.
It's not that this is a new tactic for us, but it would be new for it to work.
Right.
We hunt cold fronts around home and stuff during October, and you have minimal movement, you know, but like...
Midwest is different,
Yeah.
Things are on a very strict schedule when you've got weather that's, fawns are dependent on being born in a certain time of year, and therefore the rut happens in a much more strict window, and it's very intense, as opposed to we saw bucks chasing does in February.
How close is this little buck here?
He's at the scrape.
That right there is the scrape?
13 yards. I can't remember if that's the exact, but he's in that little hole where the scrape was, So now he's kind of working his way around, smelling around that scrape, and he's coming out kind of where you were asking me if the trail was earlier, but figured out it was the other direction. He's going to come out right in that it's a slough basically that kind of wet enough to keep vegetation from growing in it.
So that bush honeysuckle puts off in red berries in the fall.
Yeah, isn't it weird, dude?
Yeah, that is weird. That little guy right there is going to feel my arrow in about 2024.
He's got potential, man.
He does.
So now he's in that slough right there. Yeah, he's 15 yards, probably.
Yeah. Oh, you think he smelled something there? He's just like, oh.
Yeah, that's where we walked in. He's definitely smelled us, and then he looks up, and we're skylined right there.
Yeah.
He's just too young.
Doing the head bobbing thing. He's like, what is going on up there?
He for sure sees us.
Yeah.
He's young enough that he's like, okay, I don't like it, but I like the smell of what's going on around this scrape, so I'm just going to hang here for a little while. Go back in the woods and feel comfortable.
Short snort wheeze.
Short snort wheeze.
Is it there? You can't hear it.
No, you can't. It was pretty windy. That front was bringing in some good wind, which was good for us because we needed that exact wind. We needed that northeast cold front wind.
And it helps with concealment too, especially with two guys in the tree. You have the canopy moving behind you, you can get away with a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, things are popping.
So now you see in the bottom left there, I kind of highlighted it for you. That is a monster A-point.
Yeah, and then camera guy says, not that one, the other one.
And I'm like, oh my goodness. If that's not the deer I'm supposed to shoot, this other one has got to be the big giant. Take off. There he goes.
The big deer took off?
The big deer took off right through the only gap he had, which is where that other one was at. So cameraman didn't know when the big buck took off that the 8-point vacated and came right to where that other buck was standing. They just like did a half circle around each other because that deer freaked him out. He was at like 8 yards, you know?
Yeah.
And so I drew back when they took off, and I was already at full draw. He turns the camera off, and I'm trying to turn it back on. He just didn't. And so at one point he looks at me, and I'm just like, okay, well, I'm shooting. I'm not gonna let this deer run off. You know, it's a monster 8. So what's crazy is you can see down in the canopy there. If you look down, like on the bottom of the screen, it's dark down in there, kind of.
Yeah.
You know, underneath that canopy. And so I shot him, and it happened so quick. It was, like I said, it was at 8 yards that I thought I might have missed him the way he ran off, and I didn't hear him crash and everything.
I missed him. Yeah, you see it right there.
Yeah, I felt like I missed him. It's just crazy.
What's weird is it's not that late in the day. Right?
Yeah, no, it's like, I think it's like 4:45.
Yeah, so like you're like an hour from sunset.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah,
and it's just one of those dark, cold front days where the clouds are real thick.
Yeah.
Makes them want to get up and get out and move around.
Yeah. And I just could not. I put it right on. Basically, like, if you're looking at me right now, the camera is me, okay? And I'm the deer, and I'm faced like this. And I put it right here because I was up above him. Put it right above his shoulder and shot like through kind of almost the base of his neck, shoulder, and it came out down here. But there wasn't an arrow down there. So I thought if I'd have shot him that close at that angle, I was thinking, man, surely that thing passed through. And I didn't see it. And then I was looking with my binos here, and I'm looking for blood. I can't find any blood. It's dark down in there. And so I ended up having to get down and check for it, and found some blood, which was big time relief, because I thought, did I? Because really, if you look at it, like if you just pull it right just a little bit, it's a clean miss, you know? And so I thought, man, I pulled it to the right.
I didn't want to turn my head.
So yeah, we're talking about like what happened here and the shot and everything. And basically, from this point forward, I get down, I find some blood, and then we work our way basically from there. We pull everything down, work our way back, and it starts raining once we get to the truck. And I'm like, oh, this is terrible. Like I hit him. I know I hit him because there's blood, but it's not great blood, you know. And so I'm like, man, if it's like a marginal hit and it's raining, we are toast on this thing. It's so thick in there, you know. And so like we ended up, my buddy Anthony was there, and we called him, let him know, which he already kind of knew, but let him know, hey, come meet us. Met him, grabbed game carts, and took off because it was raining. We were like, you know, even if it's a marginal hit, we're gonna have to stay on the blood to figure anything out here, you know. So our best chance is to get on him quick. Came back in here, got on the blood, followed it, and basically where he was standing when he got spooked by the other buck, there's like a big thing with like a log, and it's super thick right in there. And he had basically, until I got to that point, I'd seen a little bit of blood, but didn't find a ton. And then I could see where he like jumped over that log, which is what the other buck did too. And when I went around the pile, left them there, I found blood, and it was starting to get pretty good, like after that. And I think when he jumped over and landed, he loosened that arrow up a little bit, and then I found the arrow like not long from there. So like once that fell out, it was just red carpet. We walked to him, and he literally crashed like 50 yards. I mean, right in there.
That's cool.
And so anyway, yeah, as you've seen so far with the mount and some of the footage that we're showing you here, like this dude is a monster. I mean, like one of the bigger deer I will ever kill on public land, and one of the bigger deer I've killed so far, even with a bow, period, private or public.
And the second biggest deer within 20 yards on this hunt.
That'll make you sick.
So let's talk a little bit about that, though. Yeah. Like, we've established how exciting it is to kill that big buck. You and I have talked about it a ton. Let's talk a little bit about the other deer and what went wrong with that deal. Like, this place we're hunting is a hub scrape, or you're hunting. I'm not there, but I feel like I am because we all were a huge part of this all stuff happening. Yeah, I've been there. So you kind of have deer coming from different directions and stuff. So like the deer you killed versus the deer that was at 8 yards and spooked, like where did those bucks come from?
So I believe the snort wheeze we heard when the little buck was there was from the 8-point that I shot, because we heard it back. So essentially, like if I'm facing the tree here, the scrape's there, the little buck's hanging out here, and we hear one back over here. snort wheeze. And so this buck goes and has like kind of the alert thing, and he walks and kind of works his way back over here, and he disappears. And about the time, a few minutes after he disappeared, that's when Jack says, our cameraman says, hey, there's a buck coming, and there's two. He's like, the one in the back's bigger. And so I'm like, okay. I'm thinking, all right, well, that's good. We got a big buck coming in, And so he's like, they're coming off the hill or whatever, I guess. So I didn't see hardly any of this. I told him when I set up, I said, the deer are going to come from behind me. You're going to have to watch my six. That's the way it's going to have to work. And so just keep your eyes back that way, because I needed to be able to shoot the scrape, because that was one of my only shots. So I had to set up to shoot the scrape with my back facing where I thought they'd come from. So anyway, this deer is coming, and I'm like trying to get him to let me know if I can move. I'm like, can I move, and let me know when I can move. He lets me know. I grab my bow, I get it in here. Once I get it ready, I'm like, can I turn? I'm trying to figure out like, hey, don't let me mess this up. And I'm not trying to blame him at all on this, but like basically what happens is I finally start to turn my head, and I look over and I see the big 8. And he sees me see that 8, and he goes, not that one. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's a monster in here. So I'm like, okay. Well, he's like, he's coming down this trail really close. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, just let me know when I can move, And I don't know what happened. I don't know, like, what happened behind me. Like, if he told me to move and then the buck looked up immediately and he just didn't feel like he could say anything to me or whatever. But essentially, he kind of gave me the green light. I started to turn my head. I literally turned it like this much. Like, the deer shouldn't have seen me. But I think the idea is that we're skylit. We're silhouetted essentially against the sky. And so it's just easy for that deer once he gets so close to see you. You know what I mean? You're just up there, right there on top of him. Before that, he's going through the honeysuckle and stuff, and he just doesn't notice you, right? And so, like, anyway, when I finally turned my head just so slightly, and I saw him, and I could tell he's looking right at me, and I was like, oh, this is game over, and it was. And he took off, and the only place he could go that was open and so thick in there was right to that buck. So that other buck freaked out and did like this little half moon and just landed right there, and he's looking back away from me, and I'm like, oh, this is so easy. I'm like, are you recording? And I said it like 3 or 4 times, and he just never could hear me with all the wind and stuff, and he had turned the camera off. So by the time he got it on, the deer was like 30 yards, like running away, and so I don't think we got any footage, but we got the leaves shaking from the trees.
Yeah.
So
What's wild is that a couple things. The only reason you killed the deer you did is because there was more than one big buck in there. If he wasn't in there, then it just would have been like, well, that stunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing that's weird is that no matter the maturity of a deer, it doesn't matter. If he is surprised by the aggression of another deer, they always...
Oh, yeah.
They always, like, flight versus fight. They never are like, whoa, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I mean, in a hunt that happened, that's only released yet.
Yeah.
That happened to you in Kansas whenever like a 2-year-old ran at like a old mature buck. He just didn't expect it, and it freaked him out.
Yeah, like you could tell he wanted to like be like, I'm way older than you, but at the same time he's like wagging his tail and backing up. He's like, this is weird.
Yeah, and like I would imagine that the deer that got spooked is probably a year or 2 older, maybe 12, who knows. But the deer that you shot is a huge mature buck too, so he's not a back down type deer.
Yeah.
But in that situation, things went from normal to, oh my gosh, here comes this deer running at me, and he's like, I don't know what to do, so I'm gonna run the other way.
Yeah. Dude, it worked out so well. Man. Like, it's just one of those things that just, you hunt enough, things like that happen, but most of the time it happens the way that is unsuccessful. Right. So it's like, but and it was just, it was crazy. But our cameraman did say that they were both like kind of like getting aggressive towards each other. I don't know. I didn't see any of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they knew that each other were in the area.
Yeah.
So I mean, they might have like raised the hair up on the neck a little bit and kind of bowed up, but yeah, I didn't see any of that. So, but it was a really incredible hunt. I think a couple of the keys to it were just the pre-scouting that we were able to do was a big help. I think also the camera, like I mentioned in the beginning, I was able to check that camera or have Anthony, check it as well, and just kind of like bounce some ideas off of him. We talk about this a lot. Bouncing ideas is a big deal. And I said, like, where do you expect that most of the deer are coming from? And so he explained it, you know, on that camera, or what he was seeing on that camera. And so I knew those deer were going to come exactly pretty much where they came, you know, for the most part. And they did, and I was set up to make the shot, and, you know, on my strong side and everything. So it worked out really well to have that pre-scouting. And then also just the fact that, like, finding a scrape that you can tell is being used in the summer and putting a camera on it and making it happen, like, something that doesn't really happen in Texas, and we were able to find there, you know, because it's the Midwest, and it paid off big time. So having friends help you get it out too is nice.
That is nice, man. It looked like a big heavy deer on a game card.
It definitely was, and the antlers did not like going through that honeysuckle. So anyway, I think, you know, those are a couple of key points to take for you. Make sure you remember those next time you go in the woods, and remember, this is your element.
Living it.